We're in the waiting time until people show up. We'll get started in a moment with the POST-NAB 2018 live stream. Hello, hello, hello. Looks like it's a healthy connection. That's a good thing. And there we go. We've got people. Hey everybody, Jem Schofield here with the theC47, and today is Thursday, April 19th. It's my little guy's 10th birthday. We've got double digits on all the kids now, so that's pretty exciting. And my name is Jem Schofield, as I said, and let's just go ahead and start first with sort of the acknowledgments that we always have at the top of the show. So we're going to talk about the sponsors for this show and the theC47. There's a lot more than this for my workshops and things like that, but I do like to give sort of a tip of the hat to a few different companies. Mimo Live, which is from Boink Software. It's a solution that I use for these live streams. We also have, coming to you from New York, Chicago, and LA, AbleCine, where I teach. I create content for them, and we've got some pretty interesting stuff coming up in the near future related to that. And of course, my friends down under, RØDE Microphones, who provide filmmaking community with a lot of the audio recording gear that is used, especially in the microphone realm. I am coming to you live from MCM TV in McMinnville, Oregon. Yes, that's right. You heard that right. It's McMinnville, Oregon. And there you go. So it's a good studio space for me, and we've got pretty good internet here, so that's a good thing. So there you go. Just a quick, here you go. I'm Jem Schofield, theC47.com, and also on the YouTube channel where you're basically on right now. So you can find where all that content is. If you like the stuff that you see here, then you can subscribe, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the future. But as I said before, this is the NAB 2018 Postmortem. So there you go. Click on that little logo over there if you are interested in finding out about the content that I create. And the more subscribers I have, the more content I can create for you, free content. So that's what I got for you. Okay, cool. So today we are talking about NAB 2018. I would ask, as I always do, for this to be interactive. So the way this works for me is you're asking questions, we're talking shop, we're talking equipment. The more the merrier. I don't generally type my answers into the chat, but I do read your questions, and we start a dialogue, and that's always a good thing. So I really want to make sure that, especially when we're talking about something like NAB, that there are questions. So first of all, the question that I normally ask, does this look fair, at least VHS beta quality, and can you hear me clearly? There are people watching, so please type into the chat, yeah, I can hear you, Jem. It's pretty clear, or it sounds like ass, or whatever you want to say. So please let me know that in a moment, and it would be good to know that you can hear me clearly and that you can see me properly. I've just updated to the latest version of Mimo Live, so that's another reason to check in on that. So let's get into it. I think what I'll do is I'll just kind of give you guys the lowdown of what happens with me at NAB. So what happens with me is the show, traditionally we think of it being a Monday to Thursday show. Monday through Wednesday really being the only days that things are happening. It's sort of tumbleweeds and crickets on Thursday, but that's kind of nice because all of the vendors and the manufacturers, VHS quality and good audio. Yeah, I like that. Good. Okay, perfect. Thank you, photographer at large. hyphen between the photographer and the at and large. So tumbleweeds, but the manufacturers on Thursday get to go and see everybody else. It's really, for a lot of us, how we get to see our friends once a year. So it's a great show. I think year 17 for me. Jeff, you're there. I'm going to see you at Cine Gear, I hope. Are you confirmed? I hope. You'll let me know in here. Okay, good. So what happens on Thursday is I fly into Vegas and we start to prep for workshops. I hope so too, Jeff, that you will be there. So every year I teach workshops. For the last few years, my workshops have been what are called field workshops. This is an educational conference that is produced by Future Media Concepts and NAB, and I've been a part of it, I think, maybe since the beginning, which is kind of scary, but that's why I earned this gray. Let me just tell you that. Okay, so we go in. Last year and this year, we set up in a space called Polaris Studios, which is off the Strip, and it's a big sound stage in an industrial area. And I come in with my crew, and we basically spend all day Friday setting up. These are some stills from the actual workshops, and what we did is on Saturday, says we're having major performance issues. Are we having major performance issues? Because it's telling me that we are. I'm hoping that we're not. I've got a good connection here. So I think I'm just going to keep going. I think there may be a disconnect between what it's telling me in here and what's happening in the real world. Okay, so let me just get back to you guys here. Okay, so I'm going to get back here, looking at you guys. Here's the chat. It's crunchy. I like things crunchy, Jeff. I think part of the problem is, A, I've updated the software, and B, I made the mistake of upping the resolution to 1080. And I don't know if it likes that, but the data rate's the same, so it shouldn't really be a problem. So let's just cross our fingers and just keep moving forward. I'll have a lot of still images in this episode, so hopefully that'll be fine. And we'll just finesse Mimo Live so that it's better in the future. Okay, so we go in, we set up for these workshops. Saturday was an HDR from production to post workshop, brand new workshop that I did with my friend Robbie Carmen from DC Color, Tao of Color, great colorist. I believe the only certified Dolby Vision post house in the Northeast. And we taught this where basically in the morning we did kind of a little overview on what HDR is, and then I taught the production side of it, and Robbie taught the post, but we were involved a little bit in each other's parts of the workshop. So here we are on set. You can't see me in this image, but Robbie has a Flanders Scientific FSI monitor, the 240, and we're just talking about how it conforms based on its nit values to show you effectively a representation of the dynamic range of your camera. And then we're also talking gamuts here and things like that. So we had to set up to take feeds from different digital cinema cameras, and then we were looking at it in P3 and then toggling to Rec 709 gamuts and all that good stuff. So Saturday, HDR from production to post. Sunday was small to no crew, and this was a packed workshop. We had about 25 to 30 on Saturday, and then about 40 people on the Sunday workshop. And the reason everybody's raising their hands there is I asked everybody how many people who are here work in-house or for basically a company. And this number is growing. We tend to see now, or I tend to see in my workshops, about a 75 to 85% rate in terms of people who are working in-house. So it's a big part of sort of my audience educationally, and one of the reasons that I focus on small to no crew. production. So let's just bang through some images from the workshop here. This is kind of behind me, or in the background there, you'll see that there are a ton of lighting fixtures. And, you know, the number of sponsors that I have is ridiculous for these workshops. Tons of companies will send equipment in for the workshops so that I can expose people to sort of the latest and the greatest. Some of the stuff is stuff that's just being announced at the show, and then people are getting to see it just before the show, right after it's been announced. So that's pretty exciting. So here's a group of people. We're kind of going through some camera stuff and lighting stuff. This was my setup here, where we have a camera that's pushing an image to a larger screen because there's so many people in the workshop. And on these this long table made up of a bunch of 6-footers, I have a whole bunch of equipment that I think is well suited to small to no crew production. So that's kind of what we were doing there. And then here we're talking about lighting. That's my friend James Kwan, who's a cinematographer based out of Albuquerque and also LA. And he's worked with me on a lot of projects. And he came in last minute because we had so many people in the small to no crew production workshop that I needed additional help in terms of what we were doing and what we were covering and stuff like that. This is James as well, and then to his left is John Romer, who's also a DP based out of New York I've worked with for years, who came to help with the workshops. And then there's a third person that you don't see in any of these pictures because he's the one who's shooting the video and taking this BTS stuff, and his name is Ken Potts, and he has actually done the show with me for the past 2 years. So just showing you some stuff here from the sound stage. You can kind of get a sense for the set that we had built specifically for the workshop, which is really nice. And then this is a little bit of a setup here. James came in and worked with Kenny from the stage, and they did a pre-light on Friday, and we just swapped fixtures and showed people different ways that they could light this set. And we had a hazer in there, and then we had our talent. And basically, just to kind of give you a sense, and what we did on Saturday, which was pretty interesting, is for the HDR from production to post. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, it kind of settled in. It's a lot easier with the still images in terms of video quality. So what we kind of did here, which was kind of interesting, is on the Saturday HDR from production to post, we had a number of different camera systems and we rotated them. So we had a Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro 4.6K. We had an FS7 II, and we had a C300 Mark II. And what we did is we rotated those cameras with the same lenses. We used Otis lenses for everything that we were shooting, a 28, 55, and an 85. And then we basically brought that footage in the afternoon, and Robbie graded it, and we could sort of see the qualities of each of those cameras. Of course, not every camera was recording RAW. We did with the Blackmagic, but we were doing MXF on the C300 Mark II and then equivalent on the FS2. And so these are just screen grabs of sort of LUTed versions of that log footage or that raw footage. And these are all from, well, those first ones are from the C300 Mark II. This is from the FS7 II, and these are not graded. They're just basically plop a LUT on them, so you can kind of get a sense that they are dealing with color differently. Again, C300 Mark II, FS7 II need to have some changes here. This is C300 Mark II rated at an 800 ISO, 2000 for the FS2, and I just kind of pulled some stuff from some clips today just for this. I'm going to do more of a BTS video on it later on. So a lot of fun. Cast of characters. There's John Romer again in the center of the frame. That's Caleb Pike from DSLR, video shooter, good friend of mine who has actually, not this year, but in the past helped with the workshops. And then when the workshops were all done, it became trade show time. And so right after the workshops on the first evening, we went over to a restaurant in old downtown area and met up with the ATOMOS fellows. And That's Levi sort of in the center of the frame. Billy Campbell from Blind Spot Gear over there, looking all Scottish and dapper. And Dan Chung over there, and then there's Jeremy from ATOMOS showing us all for the first time this little sucker right here, which is the Ninja 5. Ben Barden, you were so missed, it's ridiculous. Small crew workshop was awesome. Thanks for putting that on. Hey, it could have been worse. You could have said it sucked, so I appreciate that. It was a lot of fun to do. I think we covered a lot of ground that day. So ATOMOS Ninja 5, we're going to kind of circle back to that as we start to talk about equipment, but that was Sunday night. And then we get into Monday morning, and the first thing I did is I went over to the showroom floor and I said hi to all of my friends at FJ Westcott. They were featuring, which is pretty cool this year, the booklight kit, the C47 booklight kit, and also the DP kit, which are both behind me, and we shot a little video about that. Yeah, it was not good, Ben, not having you there and not having Dan Fakos there. So let's just put that out there right now, that cannot happen ever again. I do expect you to come out on the Thursday before the show next year. So let's just be real about that, okay? This is messy business when your friends don't show up at NAB, and I don't even want to talk about it anymore. I was a little distraught, and you guys were very sorely missed. So, agreed, next year, promise. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. You bum. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, good. So, Westcott went to hang out with those guys. They had their new SOLIX light, which is a nice little punchy light, which I'm actually pushing into the book light. It's not on right now in that photograph. And inexpensive, daylight balance, punchy, LED. I did a couple of videos for them on it, so you can check out their website if you want to see that. And then I did something very different than I've done in prior NAB years. I basically spent the entire show, except for a couple of things which I'll talk about in a minute, walking the floor and talking to manufacturers and checking out equipment and all that good stuff. But what I did do on the Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday is Tuesday I did a presentation at the Canon stage. I was talking about two camera systems, the XF405 and the C200, both of which I have done training series on, both a 7 and an 8-part series, XF405 and the C200. So I did a half-an-hour presentation on those two camera systems. On Wednesday, towards the end of the day, where we kind of knew what was going on with the sort of show and what equipment had been released, I did a panel with really some esteemed fellow filmmakers and storytellers there. I don't know if Caleb over on the right can deal with what I'm saying, but he's putting up with me. And then we have Curtis Judd, who is just a really, really nice guy. He's also one of the tallest human beings on Earth. I think I'm going to officially call him the BFG, and I mean that in a really nice way. And then we have Eric and Chris and all these guys, and it was just great to be on the panel with these guys and just kind of hang out. And then we have the last day where I hung out with these flunkies. Again, Eric Naso from News Shooter, Jeff Lee from Able Cine, some bearded, short, white fellow, and then my friend Matt Allard, also from News Shooter. So we kind of did the NAB wrap-up and had a conversation about a lot of stuff. Again, as I'm talking about this stuff, feel free to throw questions out. Feel free to, make comments and all that kind of stuff about what you're seeing. And we get into sort of talking about equipment now, which is important because without equipment, I don't know. What do we have? So again, Ninja 5 was probably the first product that we... Great to talk with you as well, Jeff. I hope to see you in about, what is that, 5.5 weeks, and that we're hanging out at Cine Gear. Maybe on Saturday morning with a little bit more of our wits about us. We'll see if that's actually going to happen. You never know. So So Ninja 5 for me was a pretty interesting product. If you've ever used the original Ninja from our friends at ATOMOS, you will know that the screen quality didn't really hold up the word quality. It was like looking through a Coke bottle or something like that. Yeah, yeah, Jeff, I agree with you. So, you know, the Ninja 5 in terms of screen quality is like leaps and bounds. We get Atom HDR. We've got a 5-inch screen that looks great, but then also it's kind of svelte, you know. It's this little cool little light, which I'm very impressed by. I mean, light. Everything's got this form factor now, so I get confused. So 5-inch monitor recorder. And it's an HDMI device here, but there's some real questions that are coming up in terms of the fact that, to my knowledge, it's supposed to be ProRes RAW compatible. You can't really send RAW to a recorder over HDMI. And so are we going to get something with the battery connector on the back that's going to plug into a port, some sort of Connect product that's going to allow us to use this Ninja 5 with ProRes RAW? Lots of questions to be answered in the near future, but form factor is great. Quality of product looks to be very good, and the new drives that they have, which I don't have any up here, are really, really slick in terms of what we're seeing. So I'd like to see how this product evolves. Still waiting for my 4K Ninja Star, but we'll leave that at what it is. Next thing is really full format cameras. We talked about this a little bit. Definitely a focus over at the Cine booth and some other places, with all the major companies now making full frame sensors that are taking full frame glass. And I think a big part of that is because we've sort of moved now beyond this resolution conversation, and with BT2100 as sort of that standard settled in from an HDR standpoint, that conversation is not a dead conversation. It's a big deal. But yeah, too bad the small HD Focus OLED 5.5 inches, only 350 nits. Yeah, well, OLED, you know, so it's kind of an interesting thing, because when you look at the other Focus monitors that are not OLED, their nit value is higher. But because OLED produces a true black, I think you'll find that at least with a conformed image that you're going to see a contrast ratio that's going to be similar or possibly even better. There's so many ingredients in terms of monitoring high dynamic range, and while that nit value is not as high, meaning that the screen's not going to be as bright, and of course that will have an effect on things, especially when you're shooting outdoors. I think that when you're looking at your image on a 350 to 400 nit monitor as opposed to an 800 nit monitor, the difference between OLED and LED or LED is definitely a factor, you know, because of how that black is being produced. So OLED, at least currently, is a much more expensive technology, but it does give you that advantage of a true black, and I'm sure we'll see those nit values go up in the next year or so, and we'll see that technology evolve. So yeah. There you go. So full frame cameras, lots of them. We know what they are. The Monstro, you know, VistaVision. We've got the Venice. We've got the Kinfinity even, and then we of course have the Canon, and all the basically major manufacturers are doing a full frame camera in some form or another. So we'll see how that all sort of evolves. I guess Panasonic doesn't have one right now, but I would, do they? Maybe they do, and I'm just losing my mind. Is there a version of the VariCam where you can put on a full frame? I think there might be on the larger camera. Somebody remind me. I'm losing my mind here. Okay, now speaking of cameras, the other sort of, you know, kind of throwback to the old days was Blackmagic design. Maybe it didn't, you know, kind of have the same shock waves as it's had in the past. But I will say that definitely everybody was talking about the Blackmagic design 4K quote unquote pocket camera. We can't really call this a pocket camera unless your pocket is the size of a pocket for the BFG. So if you don't have a pocket that size, then this is not a pocket camera, but it is a pretty interesting camera overall from Blackmagic. And we've got a huge 5-inch screen. We've got the user interface coming from the you know, the Ursa Mini Pro line of camera systems, and proper headphone jack, HDMI 2.0 or above, SDI, mini XLR. So I mean, like, all the key ingredients, and the fact that it's ProRes and RAW in a product that's $12.95 that includes the full version of DaVinci Resolve 15. Pretty crazy. It's not shipping yet, so let's see how that all plays out. Micro Four Thirds sensor, so, you know, as Caleb Pike and I have discussed, you put that speed booster on there, and then you're getting that higher increased field of view. Then I think, you know, then it starts to become pretty interesting in terms of a product. Quality, you know, is really a big part of the conversation. So is color science. So it really remains to be seen until we start to shoot with this camera. But also some pretty interesting options from a recording standpoint. CFast and fast SD cards internally, and then we can also record externally to small USB-C based SSD drives and things like that. So I think it's pretty interesting overall. And the question will be, eventually, will this camera support ProRes RAW? At the moment, this is really, you know, initially a strong relationship between ATOMOS and Apple. This is a new format that has been announced and is actually a part of products as of today or earlier this week. I am currently, and finally, had to upgrade to High Sierra to install the new version of Final Cut Pro 10, which includes ProRes RAW support. So this new format is pretty interesting because it basically is giving you data rates that are similar to ProRes HQ and XQ, but it is giving you the ability to work with RAW off of different camera systems. We're looking at support initially from Sony, Panasonic, and Canon cameras. I'm sure we'll see that increase over time. This is all external support in terms of this format. So this is not these cameras from these manufacturers supporting, meaning FS700, you know, FS5, FS7 II, EVA 1, C300 Mark II, you know, in theory the C500, and then I guess the C700. This format, it's all going to external recorder. So we're going to, let's say, an ATOMOS Shogun Inferno, which will support ProRes RAW, and then we can start to work with that initially in Final Cut Pro 10. EVA 1 is a good example of that because we now have in the new firmware update the ability to have that 5.7K RAW output that's coming from the camera system. We go to a Shogun Inferno and we record that RAW signal to ProRes RAW, and we can edit as if it were a standard ProRes format. But the interesting thing about it is that it is letting us do that, but we are essentially wrapping the Bayer image in the format. They're calling it a ProRes RAW video file, but it's this kind of weird hybrid where you would normally decode the mosaic and process into an RGB video file, and you're converting your Bayer image into that video file. You're kind of doing that with ProRes RAW, but you're still retaining that Bayer image somehow in a way that allows you to work with that raw data at very manageable data rates. And so it remains to be seen. I'm pouring through the white papers and everything, sort of what the end result of all of that will be. But the promise is very good in terms of what we'll be able to do with ProRes RAW. And apparently the ZenMuse X7 will also support ProRes RAW. So we've got some interesting things happening. This is sort of in the ATOMOS, Apple, and a few cameras realm until later this year. And then my hope is that we'll start to see support for this particular format in DaVinci Resolve and Premiere Pro, and also hopefully it will be added to specific camera systems in the future, so we start to see that being added as part of our workflows. Again, open forum here, ask questions, make comments about things. I'm ready to go. I'm just going to keep talking about equipment and formats and all that kind of stuff. But I would say that from my standpoint, I'm excited about the promise for ProRes RAW. Until we really start to work with the files, that really will tell us a lot. But the fact that we have a potential for a very manageable format that lets us still stay in RAW until we basically push our content out to the world is pretty exciting to me overall in terms of what we can do. So let's move on here. Just some other things. I am still very excited about the next iteration of Frame.io. I cannot imagine my post life without this product now, both from an internal post supervisor sort of workflow with an editor or editors, and also from a client standpoint. It's going to be exciting to see where this product goes in the future. And for me, what I'm really loving is that I kind of committed to this platform near the beginning, seeing that was one of the first sort of really well thought out platforms doing this. We've had stuff like this on and off for years and years, but this looked like it was going to be strong. And what I like is that this company is in a rapid development process. Seems to be a very stable product. Hold on. That knocking was me knocking on my Apple box to make sure. I had to knock on wood there. But I've been having very, very good success with Frame.io, so I'm excited about where that's going and where they take it. And it was also fun to run into the Diamond Brothers, as always, and I'm sure I'll see them at CineGear. Had a chat with Wes from SMALLHD. Love what's happening with the creative services division of the Vitek Group, and seeing sort of that R&D from companies like Teradek getting into the SMALLHD products. Pretty exciting to see something like the Focus Bolt that can either be a transmitter or a receiver product that's allowing us to have both a monitor and a wireless monitoring system that is really, compared to what it's been historically, very cost effective, sitting in sort of that $1,200 to $1,300 price range. So I'm excited to see where all of that stuff goes in the industry. Didn't really get to have a play with this, but I was kind of fascinated by what Tilt is doing with their wireless follow focus system, or their FIZ system in general. You're looking at 2 motors. You're looking at basically a complete system with batteries, with gears, well, with the motors, you know, that can attach to gears, and also the remote follow focus system and everything else, and, you know, slap a monitor on this thing. But this whole system is about $1,200 or $1,300 US. So kind of fascinated about it. A little, you know, question mark in my mind in terms of the reliability, but did meet with a DP there at the booth who has the system and says that it's very reliable. So we'll see sort of where that goes and how that product develops. I would like to get my hands on it at a certain point in time to really see what the quality of that product is. Kind of jumping over to the lighting kind of realm, I wouldn't say that we had anything that was completely groundbreaking. We're seeing a lot of higher draw, higher output LEDs. Of course, this trend towards RGB in one form or another is definitely occurring. But I got really excited when I went to the Aputure booth and I saw this LICO mount. And this is currently was attached to their 120D Mark II, which is sort of an evolution of their 120D. Where they figured out how to take basically the ballast unit and put the power supply into it with the V-mount lock battery mount, which means that you have one less piece as part of your kit. But the LICO mount itself, really, really nice. It's going to be a variable focus LICO, and it will have a place for a gobo, and you're going to be able to cut that light, and it was cutting that LED really nicely. And it has this standard Bowens mount, so you're going to be able to use it on the 300, on the 120, the 120D2. So I'm excited about this product. It's not out yet. I think it's coming out late summer. From what I understand, it's going to be somewhere in the $400 range, but quite honestly, that is a steal if I can take my chip on board LEDs and make them into a more focusable, controllable light, which is exciting to start to see these lensing and light control options from lighting companies, and we're seeing more of that happen all the time. Bright Tangerine, why am I showing this silly picture? I'm mainly showing it because besides the person's arm that's in the frame, underneath that misfit, I think that's a misfit in the front, on the left-hand side of the frame, that's Rob from Bright Tangerine. And on the right-hand side of the frame, there's Matt Allard from News Shooter. Great products. We had their follow focus system, the revolver in the small to no crew workshop, and I am really happy with that. Zero play on the unit that we had, so really, really cool. Yes, Roscoe did acquire DMG Lumiere. And they acquired them quite some time ago, actually, and they're lights that I've used. In fact, the Lumiere lights are featured in my advanced cinematic video lighting course with lynda.com. I really like those products. So we're going to start to see Roscoe kind of expand in their lighting area and, you know, and also be in the RGB space. So that's pretty exciting as well. Big fan of Innovative and their carts. I have to say that, you know, this Scout EVO, maybe I'm not going to get the Stormtrooper version of it, but, you know, is really just kind of, you know, it's the cart. A couple of these, one for camera, one for DIT. I'm happy. Small crew production. If I had two of these Scout EVOs, I could pretty much do what I need to do on most of the shoots that we're doing. This little Aputure MX light is going to be about 150 bucks, bi-color, built like a tank. That's a heat sink on the back. That's just 2 units, front and back. Built-in battery, boost mode for more output. I really like that. It was a light that had sort of been teased before. Also in the sort of high output, Intelitech had some pretty interesting high draw, high output LEDs that I thought were pretty interesting. Surprised me on the floor. Nothing really surprised me, but I was pretty interested in these lights here, which are the Luxli Cello. That's a 10-inch version of their 5-inch light, but much evolved, a few $100 US, and will be red, green, blue, white, and amber in terms of the LEDs inside of it, and it will have gels inside of it, which is a trend that we're seeing. In one of the earlier pictures from the workshop, I think I showed, and you probably saw there, let's just see, bang through these, boom, boom, boom. So there's the Sky Panel S30C. they did an update on the sky panels to version 4.0, so they just keep taking that light and evolving it in terms of its functionality. So I was really happy to sort of see that in that light. Nothing groundbreaking. We're just seeing this evolution now, and I think one of the big differences between NAB this year and maybe some of the prior years is that the show didn't seem to have the same kind of frenzy. I mean, the Aputure booth is always sort of, you know, buzzing, but it seems like things have started to settle in, and that's a pretty good thing. I don't know when the digital Sputnik Voyager tubes will ship at all. And, you know, it'll be interesting to see if we get a better idea of that at Cine Gear in about 5 or 6 weeks. So let's see what happens with that. So my favorite product, and you can see a little bit of it in my Aputure kind of roundup and also in the New Shooter roundup, was from a company called The Light Bridge. The Light Bridge. Here I am at the Aputure sort of NAB roundup, and I'm showing this product here, Caleb. This is a very uncomfortable looking photograph. It's not really, but I'm basically bouncing one of the lights from the booth into Caleb's face there. It's a reflective mirror-based system, but it's a very precise system, and this is actually a sample of a set that's actually being lit with a couple of their larger versions of these mirrors. And this is actually this miniature set that they had with these pocket-sized versions of their mirrors, and they're just pushing off of a little LED light left of frame and then using the mirrors. And I just wanted to just show you, I took 3 screen grabs of sort of the differences of the quality of light you can get depending on the diffusion that you have and what angle that light is being pushed into the room. So there you go. Again, we'll just say number 1, 2, and 3. So let's just bang out of there. And here it is, the Cine Reflect lighting system from the Light Bridge. I have the 15 centimeter ones here. It's all Euro sizes here, so, you know, here you go. And you'll see that I've got these different mirrors here. So let's just take a look at that reflection right there in terms of there. This one is more of a standard mirror. So you'll see this will have about a 97% reflectance. And then we've got this one here, which almost reads as white, even though it is a silverish, very diffused version here. And then we have here another one here. So basically sort of mirrored to heavily diffused in terms of the different types of diffusion that you get. And they come in all different sizes. This really excites me because anytime I see a new lighting modifier, and this is not a new product, it's been developed over about a 20-year period, and I saw videos on this years ago, but now it's sort of, you know, getting down to business. It's really exciting. And I can't wait to start to get into the 25 and 50 centimeter versions. There's a 1 meter version too, which you can light a room with and really start to show people what they can do with these modifiers. I think they're going to be a product that fit very, very well into small to no crew production. Photographer at large, you are correct. Tobii and BBNS is going to be the U.S. distributor for the system, which means that hopefully we will see them on display, then that people can try them. I'm definitely going to have them in my workshops. You know, I'm thinking that the 25 centimeter version is going to be great for interview lighting in certain situations where I can take a harder source, you know, a Fresnel light or something that's more on the source 4 kind of category, push that light into these mirrors and start to do some pretty interesting things from a lighting standpoint. And I love the fact that they are kind of set up in a way that they're not only lightweight, but the whole system is really, really well thought out. They have essentially what looks like a giant cold shoe base system here, and there's a connector that goes in there that has a baby pin receiver. So it's built to fit within standard production environments, and it's not a you know, it's not a Kickstarter product. It's all there. It all exists. It's all packaged. It comes in different sizes. They're going to have a starter kit that has 2 of the sort of medium-sized versions of them and 4 of the smaller ones. And that kit's going to be under $500 US, about 350 euros. So that is the Cine Reflector lighting system, and I think that this thing is going to be definitely part of what I'm going to be doing in the future. In fact, I have 2 workshops coming up right before NAB, I'm losing it, right before Cine Gear that are going to be at Able Cine, and I will have the system in those workshops in LA. So those will be 2 workshops. If you go to ablecine.com and you look on their end of May calendar, the first workshop I believe will be in the afternoon of May 29th, and then we'll do one on May 30th. One will be a half-day lighting workshop, and the other one will be a full-day small to no crew workshop. So I'm very excited about that. So there you go. That's kind of my little roundup. There's other stuff to talk about, but what do people want to talk about right now? Are there any questions? If there aren't, then we'll start to wrap this thing up. If there are, I am happy to talk about or discuss equipment that you may not have gotten to see at NAB, but I may have gotten my hands on, or I may have some opinion about somehow. Anybody got anything that they want to throw up on the board right now related to NAB 2018 and the equipment, crystal balling it, things that you want to know about, camera systems, lighting, grip, anything in there. So Ben, best find amongst the little stands at the back of Central Hall. You know, I didn't spend a lot of time there because so much of what's in those little stands has now moved over into like bigger distribution. I think that the clear winner, though, and I don't think we can call it a little stand anymore, is Kinfinity, because as a camera company, we're starting to see that if those guys and gals get U.S. distribution and they really start to get into the market in a similar way, but in the camera space that Aputure did, and they get some good representatives here in the States and in Europe, I think that they can definitely have some impact in terms of camera systems. Not a lot else, though there was, you know, a lot of same as lighting products. Matt Allard looked at a very different in some ways than the Flex products. It's almost a fabric, completely foldable LED-based technology that he has up on the New Shooter website. I thought that that was pretty fascinating. And let me just bang over to the web here and just see if there's anything else that I can think of that I think would be worth speaking about from there. But the Mavo was interesting. I love the light bridge, which I've already talked about. Let's see. Smartly so, Aputure basically broke apart their Deity audio division away from that. Liking the Angelbird media solutions, but they're expensive. Cineo is still making some great lighting stuff. Oh, Schneider, not obviously in the back of the hall, but new filters from Schneider that I think are really interesting. They're these true net filters where they basically have nets in between the 2 sides of the filter. It's hard to, I think you should just go to New Shooter and watch what they're doing there. Nikki kind of talks about it, but I think that that's going to be very popular for certain types of products. DOP Choice is kind of killing it with their whole rabbit ear system and making it modular stuff. Like the stuff I'm seeing in terms of Hive lights getting bigger and smaller and what they're doing. So I think that that's pretty cool. And I've already spoken about Westcott, small HD stuff, the Luxli Cello, which is that 10-inch RGB AW LED, and I'm just kind of banging through here and just seeing if there's anything that I'm forgetting. Let me just see. Anything else that I can think of that to me is a big, big deal? I liked what I was seeing with KinoFlow. They're getting into and really, you know, getting into LED tubes now. So I think that that's pretty cool. And oh, the EASYRIG. I love this new quick release. I'm an EASYRIG user, so if you haven't seen that, go check that out. And I think we've kind of talked about all the other stuff that's in sort of the mid-tier of the kind of market as far as what we're doing. The DigiBoom from Red Rock Micro, I thought that was an interesting product. Oh, and then maybe we'll end with something that's audio related. So I went over and spoke to Ryan Burke from RØDE. He was over at the B&H booth for a couple of days, and they had their ambisonic microphone. So it's basically got 4 capsules on it. And this is really sort of an evolution of their acquisition of the sound field as a company for surround recording. And this microphone, they call it the NT-SF1, has 4 basically capsules. And what's really interesting about it is, you know, it's going to have a workflow to it. It's not just plug it into your camera and go. You have a little bit of work, at least right now, with it. But what's interesting about this microphone is that you could position this microphone here out of frame, and because of the way that it's picking up audio from everywhere, you can, in post-production, decide what your pickup pattern or your polar pattern is going to be. So you can say, oh, I recorded this, but I really want more of a hypercardioid or a cardioid pickup pattern, and you can move that dynamically in post-production. So it's pretty amazing. Photographer at large, you're quite welcome. And I've got to run now too. I think that this is our wrap-up of our postmortem on NAB 2018. I'll try to put together a little video of stuff that I saw and just a little bit of commentary to throw up on the YouTube channel. Hopefully you guys got a little bit of insight into some of the stuff from the show. Definitely go to newshooter.com and check out our post-NAB wrap video with Abel Cine. And next week could be pretty interesting. I'm getting, where are they? Jeez, I don't even know where I put them. I'm getting keys to somewhere, I think tomorrow. I'm worried that I can't find my keys right now to my car, but that's a whole nother problem. It's not your problem, it's my problem. So I'll see you guys, I think, next week on the live stream. Take care.